Hi kids, how are you? That's great! Today is a brand new day and a brand new lesson for you. Today, you're going to use the simple verbs such as the past tense, the present tense, and the future tense in sentences. This is based under the most essential learning competencies of Grade 3 English under Week 3 of the second quarter. Are you ready? Let's do this! Let's pull up the next slide. But before that, let's have a short review of what you have learned last time. Directions. Complete the sentences using the verbs in the box. Okay? Now the verbs are teach, crawl, treat, bake, bark, and meow. Now for number 1, the cats blank when the dogs ran after them. The correct verb is well done, kids, meow. Number 2, teachers blank pupils to read and write. The correct verb is very good, teach. Number 3, the dogs blank at strangers. The correct answer is well done, kids, bark. For number 4, bakers blank breads and pies. The correct answer is bake. Okay? For number 5, doctors blank sick patients in the hospital or in clinic. The correct answer is treat. Well done, kids. Now let's pull up the next slide. Now, when we say verb, it is an action word. Remember that, okay? Now let's have examples of action verbs. We have dance, work, climb, move, talk, walk, speak, clean, jump, comb, bake, write, review, stay, and many more. Now let's have the sentences. Number 1, my parents work for us. Number 2, they dance gracefully. And number 3, I review my lessons after New Year's Eve. Now the verbs in the sentences are, you have work, dance, and review. Well done, kids. Now, there are 3 tenses of verb. Again, there are 3 tenses of verb. These are present tense, number 2, past tense, and number 3, future tense. Again, we have present tense, past tense, and future tense. Now remember, there are rules that need to be followed in using the tenses of verb. Okay? Now let's have the next slide. Let's have rule number 1 under present tense. Verb in the present tense always agrees with the subject. That could be a noun or a pronoun such as he, she, or it. Now, in this case, if the subject is singular, meaning only one, the verb must be singular, only one. Okay? Now let's have example for number 1. The doctor treats his patients. Now, the subject is singular, the doctor. Therefore, the verb should also be singular according to rule number 1. Now, the S form of the verb is going to be used. You have treats. Okay? Another example, the teacher teaches his pupils. Now, the subject is singular. You have teacher. Therefore, the verb should also be singular. The S form of the verb is going to be used. You have teaches. Okay, now let's pull up the next slide. For rule number 2, verb in the present tense always agrees with the subject. That could be a noun or a pronoun, such as we, you, and they. Now, in this case, if the subject is plural, the verb must also be plural. Remember that, okay? Now, for number 1, the doctors treat their patients. Now, the subject is plural. You have doctors. Therefore, the verb should also be plural. The simple or the based form of the verb is going to be used. You have treat as the verb. Okay? Let's have another example. The teachers teach their pupils. Now, the subject is plural, which is teachers. Therefore, the verb should also be plural. The simple or the base form of the verb is going to be used. You have teach as a verb. Do you understand now? Well done, kids. Now let's have rule number 3, okay? For habitual actions or verbs that happen regularly, consider the following below. Now, for column A, you have the dog runs, father goes to work every day, and mother bakes a cake every Saturday. For column B, you have the dogs run, father and I go to work every day. Lorna and her sister bake a cake every Saturday. Remember, habitual actions are always followed by time indicators or time expressions such as every day, always, every morning, twice a year, and more. Now, in this case, for column A, the time indicators or time expressions are during holidays and every day. For column B, the time indicators are twice a year and once a month. Okay? You always have to look first for the subject and then followed by the verb. Alright? Well done, kids. Now let's do some activities. Underline the correct form of the verb inside the parentheses to create a meaningful idea. For number 1, mother wakes up early every morning. Now the subject is mother, which is singular. Therefore, the verb must also be singular. Now the correct verb is, well done kids, wakes. Number 2, she cooks breakfast for all of us. Now the verb is she. Now the correct verb that's going to be used is well done, cooks, because she is a singular and therefore it has to have a singular verb, which is cooks. Okay? For number 3, Lena helps mother prepare sandwiches for our snacks in school. Now the subject is Lena, which is well done, singular. Now the correct verb is helps. Okay? For number 4, father takes his bath early every day. Now the subject is father, which is singular. Now, it has to have a singular verb. And the correct answer is, well done kids, takes. And lastly, for number 5, my friends lives near the school. The subject is my friends, which is plural. And therefore, it has to have a plural verb. Now, the correct verb is live. Okay? Now let's pull up the next slide. Now, let's talk about past tense. Past tense tells the verb happened already in the past. Okay? When we talk about past tense, these are verbs that happened already in the past. Now, we form the past tense of the verb by adding D or ED at the end of the action word for regular verb. Okay? Now, let's have rule number 1. If a regular verb ends with letters T, B, N, G, P, and R preceded by a vowel, form their past tense by doubling the consonant before adding ed. Examples: the word rob. When we form its past tense, we double the letter B and then add ed. Okay? Another is step. When we form its past tense, we double the letter P and add ed. And many more. Okay? Now, for rule number 2, if a regular verb ends in E, form their past tense by just adding D. Okay? Again, if a regular verb ends in E, form their past tense by adding D. Examples: love. It ends with letter E. So when you form its past tense, you just have to add letter D. The same with race. It ends with letter E. Now to form its past tense, you just have to add letter D. And there are lots of verbs that end in letter E. When you see those verbs that end in letter E, you just have to add letter D to form their past tense. Okay? Well done, kids. Now let's pull up the next slide. For rule number 3, if a regular verb ends with a Y, okay? If a regular verb ends with a Y preceded by a consonant, form their past tense by changing Y to I, then add ed. Okay, now let's have the examples. The verb is cry. It ends with the letter Y, and it is preceded by a consonant which is letter R. Therefore, change Y to I and add ed. Cry will become cried. Okay? Another is dry. It ends with letter Y, and it is preceded by a consonant which is letter R. Now, change Y to I and add ed. Dry will become dried. Okay? Well done, kids. Now let's have rule number 4. If a regular verb ends with a Y, preceded not a consonant but a vowel, form their past tense by just adding ed. Okay? If a regular verb ends with a Y, preceded by a vowel, form their past tense by just adding ed. Examples: play. It will become played. You just have to add ed. Okay? Another is stay. You add ed. From stay will become stayed. Okay? Now, let's have an activity here. Directions. Give the appropriate past form of the verb. Number 1. Almira blanked so hard yesterday. Now, the verb is cry. And it already happened yesterday. The correct answer is cried. Okay? It ends with the letter Y and preceded by a consonant. So change Y to I and add ed. Alright, for number 2. The teacher blanked our parents to school last Monday. The verb is call. Now, the correct answer is called. Okay? Now, for number 3, Marco and Leo blank in the playground yesterday. The verb is play. It ends with the letter Y and preceded by a vowel, which is letter A. Now, what you're going to do is you just have to add ed. From play, it will become played. Well done, kids. Number 4. The janitor blanked the wall last Friday. Now, the verb is scrub and it ends with letter B. Now, what do we have here? Yes, well done, kids. You just have to double the last letter, which is letter B, and add ed. Okay? Now, for number 5, we blank our garden plots for planting last week. Now, the verb is prepare, and it ends with letter E. What you're going to do is you just have to add letter D to form its past tense. Well done, kids. Now, aside from regular verbs, we have irregular verbs, okay? If a verb is an irregular verb, follow the following rules, okay? For rule number 1, some irregular verbs change their spelling when forming their past tense. Remember, we are now talking about irregular verbs. Now let's have examples. From write, it will become wrote. Catch, it will become caught. Bring, it will become brought. And sing, it will become sang. Okay? Now, we have most common examples of irregular verbs in their past tense. Okay? So we have 4 columns. The first 2 columns are present tense and past tense. And the third and the fourth, present tense and past tense again. Now, for the present tense, we have begin. It will become began. Blow, blew. Drink, drank. Fall, fell. Grow, grew. Ride, rode. Rise, rose. Give, gave. Run, ran. Shine, shone. Sit, sat. Throw, threw. Win, won. Become, became. Draw, drew. Get, got, and many more. Remember, kids, that when we form the past tense of irregular verbs, we just have to change their spellings. Okay? Well done, kids. Now, let's have rule number 2. Few verbs have the same form in either the present tense or past tense. Okay? Now, examples. We have set. It's the same with set in its past tense. The same with put. Put under present tense and still put under past tense. Okay? There are just few of them. Most of irregular verbs change their spelling. But in this case, few verbs have the same form in either the present tense or past tense. Okay? Now, I want you to remember that we use time expressions or time indicators in the past when we talk about actions that happened in the past. Okay? Now we have yesterday, last year, last week, last month, last night, long ago, and many more. Now let's have an activity under irregular verbs. Give the appropriate past form of the verb. Number 1. Melissa blank the lottery yesterday. Now the verb is win, and the correct answer is won. Okay? Now let's have number 2. The teacher blank English subject last Monday. The verb is teach, or the irregular verb is teach. Now, its past tense is taught. Okay? For number 3, Mike blank his garbage in the trash bin yesterday. The verb is throw. It will become threw. Okay? For number 4, Cindy blank her reviewer last night. Now, the irregular verb is make. It will become made. Okay? Now, for number 5, the sun blank after a heavy rain last week. Now, the irregular verb is shine. It will become shone. Well done, kids. For number 1, the time indicator is yesterday. Number 2, last Monday. Number 3, yesterday. Number 4, last night. And number 5, last week. Okay? Now let's pull up the next slide. At this point, we're going to talk about the future tense. Future tense is a tense of verb that tells a future action. Again, future tense is a tense of verb that tells a future action. Now, we have a general rule for this. We add the helping verbs or auxiliary verbs will or shall plus the base form or simple form of the verb and the time indicators or time expressions that indicate future action. Okay? Now, let's have the examples. The verb is work. It could be will work or shall work. Okay? Another is make. It could be will make or shall make. And for the verb give, it could be will give or shall give. Okay? That is the general rule. Again, we add the helping verbs or auxiliary verbs will or shall plus the base form or simple form of the verb and the time indicators or time expressions that indicate future action. Okay? Now, I want you to remember this when we talk about future tense. We use time expressions or time indicators in the future tense when we talk about actions that will happen in the future. We have next week, next month, next day, tomorrow, tonight, 10 years from now, and many more. Now let's have an activity about future tense. Directions. Box the appropriate future tense of the verb. Number 1. Sheila cleans will clean. Cleaned her room tomorrow. Now the correct form of the verb is will clean. Okay? For number 2. They act will act. Acts in the play next week. Since it's in the future tense, the verb or the correct verb is will act. Okay? For number 3, Sophia will go, went, goes to the province next month. The correct answer is will go. Okay? For number 4, our team played, will play, plays basketball on Thursday. The correct answer is will play. And for number 5, I will did do my best to get high grades next grading period. The correct answer is will do. Okay? Now the time expressions or the time indicators are, for number 1, we have tomorrow. Number 2, next week. Number 3, next month. Number 4, on Thursday. And number 5, next grading period. And they talk about future tense. Alright, kids? Now, I want you to remember this. A verb is a word used to indicate an action. Now, we have 3 tenses of verb. We have present tense, past tense, and future tense. Past tense tells actions that already happened in the past. Present tense shows action that is happening or happens regularly or habitually. And for future tense, it tells an action that will happen in the future. Alright, kids? Well done! Now, thank you for listening. I hope you learned a lot in our lesson. Have a good day. Goodbye.